Okay, let's dive right in. A president's power can feel abstract, but one of the most direct ways we see it in action is through the executive order. In this explainer, we're going to look at a really fascinating case study, a whole series of executive orders all signed in a single week. It's a great way to see just how this power can be used to try and shape policy on, well, pretty much everything. And that's really the big question here, isn't it? How much can actually change in just 7 days? We're not just looking at one policy in isolation. We're going to unpack 5 major directives that touch on everything from international trade all the way down to your personal bank account. So, first things first, let's just be clear on what we're talking about. An executive order. It's not a law that goes through Congress. Think of it as a direct command from the president to the federal government. It's signed, it's written, and it carries the force of law for all the federal agencies. It's an incredibly powerful tool for turning a policy goal into action, basically with the stroke of a pen.
Okay, let's see this tool in action. First up, we're going to look at how these orders can be used to pull some major economic levers, starting with one that has a huge impact on global trade, and then another that zeroes in on government spending right here at home.
25%. That's a big number. The first order we're looking at imposes this new tariff, and we're not talking about a tax on just 1 or 2 specific products. This is a 25% tariff on all goods being imported into the U.S. from India.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. Look at the justification. The order doesn't actually point to a trade issue with India. Instead, it directly connects this tariff to the national emergency concerning Russia. The order states the tariff is a direct response to India directly or indirectly importing Russian Federation oil. So you're seeing an economic tool, a tariff, being used to try and enforce a foreign policy goal.
And just to get a little technical for a second, this 25% tariff is what's known as an ad valorem duty. It's a fancy term that just means the tax is based on the value of whatever is being imported. So pretty simple. The more expensive the shipment from India, the higher the tax bill.
Okay, so let's shift gears from the international stage to domestic policy. The next order takes aim at how the federal government spends its money. And the document frames it as a very clear problem and solution. The problem, as it states, is an offensive waste of tax dollars. And the proposed solution is to strengthen accountability for how government grants get handed out.
And to make its point, the order doesn't just talk in generalities. It gets really specific. The text itself calls out these exact examples as a misuse of taxpayer money. It argues that grants have been given to projects that are either wasteful or, in the administration's view, go against the national interest.
So what's the fix? Well, here's the solution it lays out: a new, multi-step review process. Now, the real game changer here is step 1, putting a senior political appointee in charge of overseeing grants. The whole point is to insert direct political oversight right into the heart of the agency process, to make sure federal dollars are going where the administration wants them to go. Okay, so we've gone from federal spending to something even more personal: your money. These next 2 directives are aimed squarely at the financial lives of regular Americans. We're talking about everything from your 401k to just having a bank account. All right, the first of these orders wants to, as it says, democratize access to something called alternative assets. For most of us with a 401k, our choices are basically stocks and bonds. This order wants to blow that wide open.
And we're not talking about anything vague here. The order spells out exactly the kinds of investments it means. Things like private equity, real estate, even digital assets, as long as they're in a managed fund. The goal is to push the Department of Labor to make it easier for 401k plans to offer these, arguing it gives normal savers a shot at the same kind of growth the big institutional funds get.
Now, flipping to the other side of personal finance, a different order tackles the very ability to have and use a bank account. And it uses this incredibly specific example, alleging that after January 6th, the government suggested that banks should flag their customers' transactions for things like shopping at Cabela's or using political terms like MAGA in payments.
And that allegation leads directly to the core policy goal here, to put a stop to what the order calls politicized debanking. The argument laid out in the directive is that you should only lose access to a bank for financial reasons, actual risk, not because of your political or religious beliefs.
And just like that order on grants, this isn't just a suggestion. It's a set of marching orders with a very clear timeline. It tells all the big financial regulators to go back, review their rules, and even investigate past actions. It actually requires lenders to find and offer to reinstate clients who they might have dropped based on these kinds of criteria.
All right, for our last theme, we're moving away from dollars and cents to something a little less tangible, but for any administration, just as important: national identity. And this is all handled through one single order focused on a huge upcoming event on the world stage. This order creates a brand new White House task force, and its job is to prepare for the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. And the mission statement, right there in the text, couldn't be clearer: to use the games to project the specific image of the nation to the entire world.
And you can tell just how important this is by looking at who's on the task force. I mean, this is not some low-level committee. It is chaired by the president. You've got the vice president, secretary of state, secretary of defense, the head of the FBI. It's basically the entire top tier of the U.S. government.
So what's their job? Well, they have to wrestle with the absolutely massive federal logistics that an event like this requires. Their responsibilities cover everything from coordinating security and transportation to making sure the visa process works smoothly for the thousands of athletes, officials, and visitors who will be coming.
Okay, so we've looked at 5 really different orders, right? Tariffs, grants, retirement, banking, the Olympics. So what does it all mean? What can we take away when we look at all of them together as a single body of work?
Well, when you see them all laid out like this, signed in just 1 week, they stop being just individual actions. A bigger picture of a governing strategy really starts to emerge. You can see a clear set of stated priorities.
When you boil it all down, you see these 4 big themes popping up again and again. First, wielding economic power, using tools like tariffs and grant controls to get things done. Second, reshaping individual finance, with that focus on retirement and banking. Third, realigning the federal government itself by putting political oversight deep inside the bureaucracy. And finally, actively projecting a certain national identity on the world stage.
And really, at the end of the day, that's the key takeaway. An executive order is the beginning of the story, not the end. It's a powerful statement of intent. It's a direct command to the massive machinery of the federal government. But what happens next? The actual implementation, the pushback, the long-term impact. Well, that's a story that's still waiting to be written.